charismatic, talking. It was like a Frank Capra movie. And it wasn't, you're trying to find a star or somebody who's got some idea. A lot of people at the forum are going to say, if only we read Karl Marx, then we could get the world right. They're going to set the president straight and all that kind of thing. But you want to make sure that there are avenues for people to communicate a wide variety of ideas and there not be censorship of that. You're following that issue on censorship is really important, not only for the web, as you're saying, and it's very disquieting when you talk about they take sites down. And look what they do in China. They just, they bend over backwards.
It happens here, Harold. It's the exact same as China. No difference, zip, zero, no difference between what's happening in China and here. Okay?
I don't agree with that.
Oh, why? Why don't you agree with it? Because I can bring you many, many cases that how YouTube flagrantly takes them down. Just today, I was looking through one of my postings, and it was pointed out to me they freeze the number count. Now, the reason they freeze the number count is so then it doesn't appear on the first page as the most viewed.
Okay.
So the number count goes later. So
right. And you got all the ways people can, hotshots can manipulate it and that kind of thing. That's why it's important to get at those.
So Harold, we had at that very meeting that was like the Capra, meeting, and everybody's speaking from the Lower East Side and all that. And, but the most critical comment to me was somebody suggesting that Google take over Time Warner and their efficient engineers, have a go at it, which to me means you are exactly like what's happening in China because that's what they're using. It's just a formality about, whether the government's communist or capitalist.
Well,
look at the practices.
They'll cover those things. I don't think you're right. I mean, I think so. We can talk about different things, but the situation in China is really different than here. I think there's still some principles you can prepare to and everything in order to keep it. And at our channels, you'll find a lot of things dealing with legislation on communication and all that sort of thing.
But Harold, let's not slide by this too quick when you say it's not different. You always talk about policy. But the thing is, somebody has to enforce the policy. That's where we're going to determine whether the U.S. is different from China on this.
Well, China or the world. The world's all run by plutocrats.
The world.
And they have the power, and the people that are strong can dictate to the weak, and they can do it by subtle ways or by censorship, or they can do it. Everything's like a big narrative ad campaign.
No, I think I'm going to go tonight and sort of support you on ACAP being all free. I think that makes sense.
And ACAP, you don't have. Nobody, as far as I know, and realize too, Paula, we're working at a facility, Manhattan Network, that is really good compared to the universe of public access cable television programming.
Right.
There's lots of places out there in the hinterland and so forth where the temptations of a local power group to take over and come with some idea. That they're going to put that idea across, and they're not going to let's suppose we set it up and said, nobody can come on and have any program on Manhattan Neighborhood Network that is not vouchsafing how significant binary economics is. Nobody who's talking about anything other than binary economics can be allowed because it's an overriding issue. So there are lots of people who think that way about the issues that they have, whether it's the buildings came down or they were, whatever. But what you got to do is you got to have it open to where people. That's what I liked about the meeting. You got people all over the lot, and you are a ready-made case for that because you reach out to everybody. And that's the spirit of ACAP, and that's something that ought to be by producers of ACAP. We ought to be able to say, yeah, put it out there, and then you throw it out on the table, and people could do things all within legal. There's certain things about fraud, and things, and then what you have to get at are the principles by which you say that's going to be characteristic of the cable access producers because it's very unique. Because they've set up a system where the costs involved in terms of doing programming are taken care of through a politically viable system called franchising. So that the people who are just coining money with the cable franchises they have around the country by subscription fees and everything have to pay back something to the public interest, and one of which is public access. So you have a unique way of financing it. So, like they get you know, millions of dollars in order to set up that studio and make it possible for. You could get somebody who is homeless and living in a dumpster and could come in and create a program. One of those programs we do, so, you know, over at MNN and so forth. And keep in mind, you're not talking about the people who are well capitalized from their own personal thing and can get some latest document, some latest technique or some gadget or something gives them some advantage and they can do things. But you're talking about people that, maybe people that are really down and out. And those are some of the people you most want to have it be open to. And it used to be to do a program like you and I might just do over at MNN, that minimally it would have cost about, within the way things were, about $500 to make an hour program. Like the one we do routinely at MNN, we're able to do it with no cost except the cost of the tape. That's unique. It doesn't exist in any other communications medium, and it reflected the coaxial cable, and now the coming of the internet is now coming and everything. But you do not have to be caught up within the economic model coming out of a history of scarcity, which you can relate to philosophically. But it doesn't. It's unique, and so we don't want to let them get it fouled up, because a lot of people are saying, "Well, I can't do anything unless I'm going to realize money from it." Right. So if you got a thing where you can take that out of the picture, and I definitely think in ACAP there should not be anything. There should not be any money between us, and so that I think is important, and that's an important principle because it's possible. And then,
what about the city?
What about the policy issues at a presidential level? I don't think you're going to get binary economics and so forth until you get a president that is able to address it in a major systems way. And of course, none of them are. But that doesn't mean that we keep the avenues open for having the ideas get around from cooperative, from the people. It's going to come from the people. That's why I love that meeting you had. It was like Frank Capra, Mr. Dees goes to Washington. And it was looking at all these kind of issues. But everybody got their issue. If only we got the situation right in our public housing project, everything's going to be okay. People are looking, and they're all vulnerable because we're all slaves in a system. We don't have a right system and all that. We understand that. But the ACAP is interested in keeping those avenues clean and keeping those avenues adhering to the best principles of understanding what the reality is in terms of communicating capability.
I think you should avoid...
And it should be something for the producers. What rights should the producers have? Should they have any rights?
Yes,
We're going to talk about that with Dan at the meeting. A producer's Bill of Rights. We should think about those things and get to the roots of it. That's why it's really good to be in touch with Dean and the people, and George, and the people that were authentically laying the groundwork. Because a lot of people, when you chicken coop where there's some money, you're going to have a lot of people in there trying to get money for themselves.
Yeah, but I think you can also absorb the comment that in many ways they failed. And the World Trade Center is an example of that, if it is a media job. That means for reasons of national security, there's been a gross...
You're bringing up that, you're going in there, and you're able to bring up that issue and not be laughed off the stage. And people can bring things up. You talked to Al today a little bit on your program, and you said, well, it's an idea. And he said, oh, okay. And then he said, well, he thought it was Jewish. Or something. So people get confused and everything. But I don't think we should get ideologically out on any particular philosophy of economics or politics.
But Harold, when you said that it's going to take a presidential dictate to get binary economics, what about the New Deal? What got the New Deal kicked in?
Well, the New Deal was in another era.
And
that was a disaster. I'm just having a bite of donut, so bear with me.
But do you think that today we have less of a disaster if indeed 9/11 came down the way it probably did?
I'm not paying hardly any attention to 9/11 at all myself.
I know.
I think it's just a side issue and everything.
Yes, but the thing is, binary economics is not a side issue. How are you going to motivate people to take it seriously? You can say that the New Deal came when people saw shanty towns in Central Park. Now, just because we're not seeing shanty towns in Central Park doesn't mean that we don't have a disaster.
Keep looking the way the subprime thing's going.
Yeah, but so what I'm saying is we don't have shanty towns in Central Park, but we have a building that supposedly was knocked down by airplanes. It's so ridiculous, the theory. And then when you have the disinformation theories talking about controlled demolition, that doesn't make sense either. So what could be more glaring? What could be a more dramatic example that we need to kick in so that we can do something better than the New Deal?
Well, yeah, that in a sense is saying we have to lay us on with history. And that's a larger metaphor for the situation humanity is in. You have all kinds of institutions and assumptions. I just finished doing a thing, Sidney Greenfield. I'm going to put it up today. It's really good. And, you know, that we have a liaison with a new way of capability, like Bob talks about unutilized capability. We have a capability, if you start thinking about it, of making the planet sing for everybody. We have a capability that we didn't have in 1930. We don't have its technology. And it can be very liberating if you have a system that lets us do collectively what we have the capability of doing.
Right.
It's a different thing. It's like Keynes was writing that piece about his grandchildren in 1930, about the time that was getting going, the Depression and FDR and everything, and that was a lot of that was politically oriented. So you've got a different situation that's characteristic of the time, and you have cable access producers, and there should be an organization that can represent their interests.
But let's not let go of this. What is the different time in the 1934s? You know, he was still separated from Adam Smith, or, you know, with the Wealth of Nations. 1934, there already was a lot of technical achievement.
Yeah, that's right. There was.
So,
could you say one time if we had financed Social Security with a binary model, we probably wouldn't have 99% of the problems we have. And that's a thing coming out of history. But you want to be you're younger, okay? So you want to be a little bit able to understand that even if you go back to the Founding Fathers, why didn't the Founding Fathers set up an internet to London and just have an immediate contact? And you're looking at it from the perspective of what's here now. But those things were all often hard won. How are you going to get growth? How are you going to get equity? How are the entrepreneurs going to be able to do the things that are now becoming possible with new inventions and new technology? And it makes a difference. In fact, that's the biggest difference. You've got to keep a mind on it. And the media is so much a part of that because that's a system of communication.
Well, I'm going to...
We didn't have anything. We barely had telephone. We didn't have electricity. They had to do the...
Yes, but we have all these things now. So what I'm going to propose is you need to introduce models. And the binary model, I think, at the basis of it is shame. We do not think that we deserve or we can bring up or we can talk about an embarrassing topic of ownership. That's what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, I think it's worth bringing up. You're going to get a lot of argument from yet half of the world following Karl Marx, and the one thing, if you're going to do it through the binary thing like Bob's talking about, that does, or Muammar Gaddafi might be a model, but if you're going to do it that way, then you're going to have to, in a certain sense, vouchsafe the institution of private property as is understood. And there's a lot of people, say progressive people, who think it's the institution of private property itself that exists that makes for all the inequity. They made a revolution in Russia on that. And something like 30 million people were decimated in the collectivization of the Soviet Union on the idea that there should be no ownership. It should all be within the government. We will all have good people in the government, and we'll run a system and get rid of these people who are making money by having private ownership of capital assets. That's an evil institution, and that's something deeply ingrained in the progressive community.
Yes, but I think what Bob Ashford's frustration with you in particular is this issue of scarcity being transcended, that he said Harold wants everything to be free, everything to be free. And I think what Bob's wanting to show is that by having the insurance reinsurers, whoever is letting go of some percentage of their company, in the end is going to actually have more, because you're going to ensure greater wealth so that people can buy the products. So people.
Well, that I know. Obviously,
so the rich.
That's obvious. So I understand that.
I know you understand it, but what you have to be careful about, Harold, is what you understand is not necessarily what you're expressing to people and what they're hearing. And I've observed in studying your style very carefully, and being one of your biggest fans, is that this area of embarrassment that was hit after maybe an hour and a half of discussion with Blasting Caps and Bob Ashford and I.
Oh, yeah, have you put that up yet?
Yes, I have. Is that it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to see, and he says that it has to be offered from the side of those who own. Those who do not own.
Well, okay, go on.
And then he also said that if you didn't increase the capital assets, you would be essentially stealing from the rich. But because of the binary model where everybody benefits and nobody loses, then you're not stealing, because what is happening is everybody's getting richer and you're having a healthier economy. That's why I'm saying that it seems as though the kingpin point here is this embarrassment of ownership. And we have to overcome that. And if we could do that and stand tall to say, this is, you have to distribute ownership. Then you have the other embarrassing topics like, look at the directed energy weapons, look at these secret investments that people have been made, the media never talks about, and it explains the destruction, exactly what happened to the towers. So that then you can get beyond the disinformation that's going, because people are frightened. The people who have the capital, who have been investing in this kind of thing, who did orchestrate something like 9/11, are now worried about being quartered and lynched. So if you say punishment is not a model that we're embracing, we want to get beyond this. We don't want to, shame anyone. We want to heal it, whether it's about pedophilia or, whatever the issues are that people are all blackmailed over. We want that to come out, and then in that coming out process, we are also embracing a binary model that we have brilliant people like Robert Ashford and, all the others.
Okay, I understand everything you're saying. I've been following a lot. I happen to think Bob and I differ on that. That's okay. I think the major paradigm shift is the transcendence of scarcity at a level of reality. That's Bob talks about, I don't know, we have a difference, but I think that's a major premise that would be before anything binary.
Yes, but the thing is, we have to...
That the capability, Bob talks about unutilized capability in a more traditional model and everything like that, but the capability that we have, we could not have set up, we have a capability of setting up a universally just and appropriate, efficient, and liberating model for the world. And we could not have done that in the 5th century. We could not have done it in the 7th century. We could not have done it in the 18th century. Couldn't even do it in the 20th century. Maybe we were coming up to the end of that. But our capability was growing, so we have an unutilized capability, and that is the transcending of scarcity. It's got nothing to do with the reality, because it's all based upon a system where it was assumed, and to say you transcended scarcity is ipso facto absurd, and that's the default position of virtually the entire world. There's very little being done. I like Blasting Cap said he had investigated post-scarcity anarcho models. You got people Bakunin, you got...
Yes, but Harold, I think it's very important that we do resolve this, because then you bring out the model to where the masses can start to... If you have a couple people who are holding the keys to the kingdom and they're not in agreement themselves, then you can be sure the masses aren't going to understand it. But I think that this can be worked out, which is why I'm saying ACAP being totally free, no money. I'm going to come tonight. I'm going to support that.
Not tonight.
No, but you're doing something.
No, the one that is the general meeting is the 24th. This is just a handful of people.
Okay, well, okay, okay. I don't want to get off topic here. The thing is, what I do want to explain Robert's position is he says scarcity being transcended or not is irrelevant. It's a different argument.
I think it's primary.
But again,
different.
We should work this out separately.
Well, we've tried to over the years.
We will, because now we've got blasting caps and we've got a lot of viewers and we've got 9/11. We've got a highly motivating factor. This isn't shanty towns anymore in Central Park. We have a disaster that we haven't yet figured out, and we're close to. There's a lot of people who have figured it out better than I have.
Yeah.
But they don't know about binary. They don't know about Robert Ashford. They don't know about you, about Buckminster Fuller.
Right.
That's why the older people are so precious, the people who've had these experiences.
Well,
we probably need to get Norman Kurland in the loop to find out his issue.
They're all arguing. It's like, do you ever go to a meeting of Trotskyites?
Yeah, but I don't want to hear about Trotskyites. They didn't work. They failed. It's gone. It's over. Today, we've got 9/11. It happened.
Everything is a failure. Everything is a failure. It's all a failure. The system that's in place is ushering into a point where we're very likely going to blow the whole thing up rather than liberate the thing, liberate the whole context of humanity and the ecology and link to universal consciousness. And all those arguments are never able to find any place where they can be heard, except maybe in some intellectual circles by and large, but it's relating to a situation. So I would take, in my thinking, first of all, I'm synergetic, so I'm open to anything. I'm not so sure necessarily that only the binary model can work. I'm not so sure of that. I'm not so sure there can't be some peace made with the traditional progressive socialist community and so on. Might be. It's got to keep an opening on that. I'm not locked into any particular thing, but I do think that what makes this different this time, we're in, what is it, March 13 of the year 2008, and this era that we're in, what makes this different than all 200,000 years of human history?
No, I'll tell you why Robert doesn't like that. He says that tin is all, you know, let's say the metal tin, you have it in the ground, you only have so much tin. So, you know, a binary model or a progressive or whatever is irrelevant. Tin is tin. You have that much. It's not scarcity being transcended. Now, I would argue, because I'm on your side on this, that who cares how much tin is around? The relevance is how is it affecting your life to give you the leisure and the peace of mind to pursue the nobler things that need to be pursued in life.
That's what Lewis said. He said instead of having to be all concerned with production of goods and services in the material world, people would be free to be able to be concerned with the works of civilization, which are given very short shrift now.
Right, right.
But I just am in disagreement. I think the major paradigm shift is this one where, and it's what's changing is our technological capability, and that's evolving, and that's what makes things different. That's what made 1,000 years of feudal rule in Europe after the Roman Empire possible to be challenged by an industrial revolution out of the Enlightenment. And now we've got a situation where we've gone past that. And the people who have proposed that we've gotten to the point where there is enough rather than not is the keystone toward having, and that could be modeled, it is modeled by some, and that would be the keystone issue that would make possible non-zero sum, or systems where throughout all of history, in order to Peter to get anything, he had to rob from Paul. And so the transcendence of scarcity, that's the whole essence of my life. And so I don't easily throw it out. I think is an argument.
I don't throw it out either because I'm into cold fusion. You know, cold fusion was getting energy, practically unlimited energy, and that was killed by the...
You got your friend talking about zero-point energy and all that. But these things were not available to us at a knowledge base. Like, for instance, the Great Plains, where you have the greatest, I'm a geographer, right? So you say in the United States of America, you had these the best soils in the world are in Illinois and Iowa and they were totally useless to us because those grasslands, the root systems were so thick and so daunting that nothing could be done to plow them, to turn them, you know, everything, until we got the steel plow. Until you had forged steel, which we didn't have. We didn't know how. We didn't have but the steam engine in 1776. There are all these things that are changing, and that opened up a possibility because of the technology. So there's technology that's making possible things that were quite impossible, and we, looking back time, and that's history. We've got to lay us on with that, and all the institutions and everything that's going on. We have to lay us on with that, but with an understanding that something qualitatively different has been ushered into the evolution of consciousness in this part of the universe. I propose, as Mr. Fuller did, that the capability, collective capability of our knowledge and our technology and our extended consciousness and everything has ushered in a qualitatively new reality at the level of reality, not the politically inherited reality. It was in a certain context, and that's changed. So now, and we should be relating to what is different, and I think the major premise is that collectively humanity within an ecological context has transcended at a level of capability, not at the level of reality, the level of capability.
Yes, but Harold, 9/11 is a reality.
Well, 9/11 is part of that political reality.
And the technology and the technology involved in 9/11, I think, is what could motivate to embrace the solutions that do exist. And you have to talk about the embarrassing topics. The embarrassing topics.
Talk about embarrassing. I don't quite know what you mean by that. What do you mean embarrassing?
Capital ownership has to do with giving up, and people don't want to talk about that. They don't.
Well, that's the system in place. You've got people who own all the capital assets. You have a plutocratic class in every political entity in the world that runs things.
I'll tell you what.
They don't want to give that up, and they assume that you cannot have, it's ipso facto absurd to assume that there can ever be enough for everybody.
Yes.
And so in order for them to gain, and that's how they accumulate capital.
Yes, but you see what he feels, what Robert feels, and I understand, but I can see it both ways too. When I told you scarcity has always been transcended because I gave the model of Jesus and the multiplying of the loaves, Robert was saying, Harold has a date. He's got a date. He actually believes that on this date, scarcity was transcended.
That's actually true. I do believe that.
I know.
But I don't think it was possible to even thinking about what we're going through now 2,000 years ago.
Yes, I agree. But I'm saying,
what we're going through now 200,000 years ago.
But we have a
I disagree.
But we have a responsibility.
That the extension of the technology is what's at core.
I agree, but we can't. We have to take responsibility to understand this technology, not just sort of talk about it in the abstract. What really is cold fusion? What really happened with Fleischmann and Pons? Why did Stephen Jones, who was instrumental in destroying it, why did he become the head of the so-called 9/11 truth movement? You know, these are embarrassing issues, and they're issues that will keep people sort of twisted up and to keep the freedom of speech from really flowing.
Well, I would like to go back to what you if I may, and I appreciate it and everything. You said we've always transcended scarcity.
Yes, it's always been
transcended. I'd like you to explain that to me. I don't understand that because I'm making a different premise.
Well, my feeling is that throughout the ages, you've had people who have been able to master themselves and the world around them. And one aspect of mastery is this area of embarrassment. There's some people that can walk through the streets totally naked, and you would say, okay, they're crazy. But then also they were healing. They were able to do these remarkable things.
Miracles, yeah.
Yeah, so you can't say, I mean, I know it's been said, oh, the Catholic Church, and they're in cahoots with some of the Jews, and all this is a lie. All the holy books are fraudulent. But people aren't that stupid, you know. There must have been something running that would have gotten a massive attention in a certain way. And you can take cancer, you know, there's a lot of illness. And when the energy's running, the healing is there.
I don't know what that means, the energy's running. You've got people who were masters in wisdom schools, and you had Buddha and you had Jesus and a lot of the Vedic people and gurus, and they got into a state of consciousness through meditative disciplines and all that sort of thing. But what has that got to do with transcending scarcity for the whole system?
Okay, if you were...
Except, if I may, let me just finish. And what they will do is they will offer spiritual, so-called, premises for the state of the universe that will give people an answer to the burning questions of what's it all about.
Okay, here's my answer. say in the case of health, you can talk about healings, the blind, the lame, and like that. I will propose that at least 50% of illness, at least, is caused by anxiety over abundance.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more.
Okay, so...
That is the case. So, but most of the people throughout most of history were wallowing around eating carrion and dying at about 19 or 20 years old, and it wasn't anything like the kind of world I'm thinking about that we now have the capability. It doesn't make any sense to my way of thinking to say there's always been scarcity. I'm talking in a material sense, not in some spiritual sense, or that, oh, I'm going to die, but it's okay because I'm going to heaven, or I've reached samadhi for myself, or all the things that the spiritual leaders have done so that people could cope with the existential questions that are arisen by self-reflective consciousness.
Absolutely.
Something has changed, and what has changed is the extended consciousness and the technology, and it is at the material level, and those illnesses and anxieties all have to do with a situation where there's never been enough, and you have certain social and political patterns arise and everything, which are in a certain sense unjust, and they're written into the laws and so forth, and it's all about economics. And the thing is, one last thing is, one of the things that might signal this being different this time, I mean, probably lots of people have sat in front of fires in front of a Cro-Magnon cave and said, well, this is really the most interesting time because they were conscious and so forth. But the thing that makes, on the negative side, which I bring it up only as a model, is that apparently from modeling we now can know, unlike 2000 BC or 2,000 years ago or something, that there are systems of weapons that, if they're unleashed, would apparently now mean the end of the entire species. And that did not happen.
Yes, but Harold, you don't look at the weapons. You're not looking at what happened during 9/11. That's what I'm saying.
What do you mean
have
9/11? You're not. There's no way 9/11 was going to destroy every human being in the world.
No, I disagree. I disagree. Because you don't really understand how the building came down, you don't really understand the weapons that have the ability to destroy the earth. It's only hearsay.
No, it's only not. It's modeled. There's modeling of that, and those weapon systems, those microwave weapon systems, and those things. I know. I've read a book. I've read that they got those systems. That's just one of a panoply of destructive things in terms of the asserting that we've reached a point. At some point in time, in the 15th century, you could not get all human beings killed at the behest of a single individual setting off. We were impotent, we were gestating, we were impotent in our destructive capability. And we could not do it in the Second World War. We were trying to kill each other with deep-seated hatred, torture, war, bombing, Dresden, everything we could let. 2 atomic bombs after Big Boy and so forth. We were impotent to do that, but we have now crossed that line where the modeling, and it's good modeling, and it can be done if people want to do it. They don't want to because it's not nice to think about. But we apparently now can destroy every single human being.
I'm going to say though, Harold, it's not good modeling. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well, that's the thing you could argue, that the models are faulty, and there'd be a couple survivors in New Guinea or something.
No, that's not, no.
Would pick up.
No, that's not what I mean. It's not that I'm meaning that there's going to be some survivors.
What you say you don't think there are weapon systems that, if they were unleashed, thermonuclear and germ and all that, that we can now have the ability to wipe out the human species entirely?
No, what I'm saying
did not have as recently as 1945.
No, I think you hit it exactly on the head. You said that if you looked at it, but nobody wants to look at it because it's such a depressing topic. That's what I'm saying. Just like nobody wants to look at the implications of capital ownership. It's an embarrassing topic in that case. Both of them are painful. You know, you don't want to really consider what the weapons are. For example, right now on YouTube, for sure what will get taken down instantly is if you show some of the people in Iraq that were zapped by some of these microwave weapons. for sure that site's going to be taken down instantly.
You see a little. They would take it down
because I saw the picture. It was so horrifying. They embedded it into pornography, into some semi-porn. That's how these guys were sort of working.
Do they have some sort of?
I'll describe it to you. It's this little shrunk-up head and this big bloated body, and that's what happens with the nature of this weapon. And that's just one of them. Like you say, I'm not making a big study.
Hold a second. There's a call. I want to just get rid of it. Hold on just a second.
Okay. So while Harold gets rid of the call, what I'm trying to do is to say...
Yeah, can you believe it, Paula? It was a telemarketing who's got a deal for me that's going to make a fortune. That comes on in terms of the thing. No, but I only just set up that destructive scenario because I don't think the modeling is so wrong. I've talked with a number of people who are familiar with that. Michio Kaku is such a great
Michio Kaku probably believes in the Big Bang. The Big Bang doesn't make any sense because we've got things in the universe that are older than the beginning of the Big Bang. And
then they invented out. But I heard you say something about the shriveled heads in Iraq or something about the weapons are so destructive. I'm familiar with those weapons. Familiar with that they want to dominate space from, the Earth from outer space, and weapon systems that are probably 10 or 20 years in advance of what we're even familiar with. But there are people who know that, but you don't even have to go to those weapons systems, and there's been a great deal of modeling of the destructiveness, and they come up with a time.
I don't trust the modelers.
I've been doing this all my life, okay? This tact I've done all my life. I'm not just coming upon it last Tuesday. I've done a lot of looking at those things, and there are models that would say the best time, when they say we couldn't do it in the Second World War, we were impotent in terms of the premise that you can destroy the entire Homo sapiens species. Now that it could not do. But in the year that they come up with for most of the models that have credence, and you could research it, it's worth looking at it, everything's up on the net and everything, and there are models that could be done. The year that we reached the point where we could do that, the weapon systems were so destructive, and that was the leading edge of research, protecting the old paradigm and everything, and the geopolitical structuring and everything, was about 1970. That's when the weapon, from then, we're living on borrowed time. And thank God, and it can only be modeled because we can't test it scientifically. But I think that is correct. That was about the time when the weapon systems were developed to the point where they could destroy the entire species.
Okay, so you trust the modelers, I don't. But let's get back to scarcity being transcended or not transcended.
Hold on 1 second.
Now, with Robert...
I don't know where she is. She'll be back. Okay.
Now...
Yeah, that's just what I'm saying. If you run it down, you could find that to be the case, I think.
Okay.
And then the other thing is...
Harold, come on. Now, just a second. If you believe the modelers, that's fine. I don't believe the modelers, but I do believe that we need to understand the technology. Now, I would like you to listen to what Robert Ashford said, and I want him to listen to this, and then let's see if we can synthesize it. But for the records, the reason I believe scarcity has always been transcended is because if 50% of disease comes from anxiety about abundance, and Jesus did the healings, and he brought people to health, he had to have addressed this issue of anxiety over abundance. He didn't just make
I don't see how you can make the model for a particular individual being healed and the species-wide, planetary.
Here's how I can do it. Because you distinguish the reality from the intellectual possibility. I'm saying when you heal, it's no longer an intellectual possibility. That body is healed. It's become a reality. It's the upside, it's the good side of the coin of the World Trade Center being destroyed. Those are realities.
I'm trying to understand. You're talking about the importance of being able to heal.
Yes.
I'm trying to understand, and I'm really trying to understand.
Thank you. I feel you are, and that's why I'm going with it. Binary economics is not just a pie-in-the-sky intellectual possibility, but in order for it to become a reality, I'm thinking in the case of binary, you have to address the embarrassing topic of ownership. In the case of the World Trade Center, you have to get into the embarrassing topic of how have we been investing in these black projects or even gray projects where the populace is not aware of the funding that's going on and even understands the weapons
but there
that have
are
been
oversight
produced.
committees and things who know that to some degree. They'll try and hide it and all that kind
No, Harold, the oversight committees have failed because the healing isn't there.
The whole system has failed.
Yes.
To bring an answer. That's the indictment. We do not have an answer that the future requires, collectively.
Yes, we do.
What is it?
I'm looking at it right now. The TV fakery.
That's far too. It may be synergy.
No, it's both.
But synergy is this behavior systems unpredicted by the sum of the parts. We got to bring in a whole progressive community of people who are imbued with Karl Marx.
Here it is. TV fakery. First of all, you have to face the grief of what happened. Okay. Then you've got the solution. That's what I'm saying.
What's the solution?
Binary economics, capital ownership.
Thinks that's the solution.
You do too.
See that certain and he doesn't think it matters that there's scarcity has been transcended at an ontological level. That's a minor issue.
They're separate. They're two different issues.
If only you bring in binary, you could have brought in binary. I don't understand. I still don't understand how you can say that transcending of scarcity was relevant on a system's planetary scale, including the knowledge base and the knowing and so forth, 2,000 years ago. It has always been in Cro-Magnon caves.
Okay, let's put
400 million years ago. I don't understand how you can say we've transcended scarcity.
I don't see how you can say it today. Look around.
Well, there are models you can repair to for that. You cannot test it. I don't want to have somebody set off a weapons exchange that's going to destroy it all, so then we can say, well, we tested and see 3 people survived in New Guinea.
I don't trust the models.
It can't be tested.
I don't trust the models. I trust my eyes and I trust...
That's fair enough. Now, that's fair enough. You don't trust the models.
Right.
And that's fine. That's fine. You got to have a synergistic opening. And let's not even bother with that. The default attitude is let's not even bother having anything to do with any models to suggest anything like on that destructive side. You bring it up in order to make the exact point that what's comparable to that destructive capability, characteristic of the time we live, on the living side, my contention is, and it's not sure, maybe it's not, nothing's sure, nothing's fundamental, nothing's absolute, and everything, that the idea has been advanced by some of our leading intellectuals that we cross the line in terms of our capability, not the reality of the political reality we're in. That's all institutions we've inherited out of history.
Harold, healing,
but the capability,
healing is a reality. Either you're sick or you're well.
I can't hear what you just said.
Healing is a reality. It's a reality. That's what I'm saying. It's a reality.
What is a reality? I didn't hear what you said.
Healing. The blind guy is seeing.
I don't understand that.
You don't understand that in the same way most people don't.
You got a tumor and you think positive and it goes away.
Exactly. You're making fun of it.
Lazarus is raised from the grave or something.
Exactly. You're making fun of it. And I respect
why. No, I'm not. I'm trying to understand.
I know. But what I'm saying is this is why people can't see that there were no planes that went into the building. They live in a TV reality. But the TV reality does not bring the healing. That's what I'm saying.
What's the healing? The healing would be abundance for everybody. That would be the healing context. Somebody should write a book about the importance of abundance as a reducer of anxiety that creates cancers and all kinds of ills and things.
Yes.
I understand that.
I'm 1,000% behind that.
And but how? Again, just to repeat, it really is important for me to try to understand. Do you think, and what we're advancing is that's perhaps, it's something to be put out rather than ignored, as it's so facto absurd, that there was a time when there was a scarcity, and in terms of the capability, and that we may have transcended that. Not saying we have or anything, but there are models to that effect, and those models should be ignored.
Well, first of all,
they are now. They're ignored. No one brings up the idea of the prime, the principal. What do you call it? Prime?
I don't trust those.
That is the averse side of the destructive scenario.
I don't trust those.
That's the thing that we could think about, or at least put it on the table rather than blanking it out as is done now. That's the, you know, the prime the principle, I can't think of the term, but that's the thing. And that's my major thing. And from there, then there can be questions about how are we going to organize, and it isn't as though if we organize right, we'll do it. It's there now existent, and it's caught up with the outdatedness of the institutions by which we've interrelated in an age that has been qualitatively transformed since about the year 1970. Right. Not 2,000 years ago, not 1,000 years ago, not 10,000 years ago, not 100 years ago, not even 45 years ago, but about 37 years ago. That's correct. 37 to 38 years ago was the transformation.
I don't care about models. If you believe in models, I don't believe in the models.
What else are you going to do? If you're going to deal with something about the destructive, you cannot test it in the test tube. You cannot get a Bunsen burner and do a test and then run it and get peer reviews and things like that, because it cannot be done, because it's too. I don't understand about that either. I don't understand about the fakery and everything. That's just weapon systems that are added to the weapon systems that we have.
No, I'm answering you. This is the test. It was done right in front of our eyes. Right in front of our eyes on 9/11, we had a demonstration of our weapons and our technology. And it was covered up with fakery.
You say that. Let's say you say that. Okay. So what? So what? So you got these people that are defending a system and so forth.
It's more important than a model. The model's stupid.
And they lied to us, and they pulled the wool over our eyes, and they can do it by manipulating Photoshop, and they can do all these kind of things. So what?
So what? It's a model. It's a stupid jack-off model. It means nothing. If it makes you frightened, if it makes you not able to discuss intelligently, it's just a model.
It's a thing like the Reichstag fire.
But what I'm saying,
you can keep power and all of those kind of things. We understand that. That is not what I'm talking about.
This is not a model.
Example of the misuse of power.
This is not a model.
So what? No, but what is? Okay, that was done. That was reality. You're right. They had a Reichstag fire. You had Nazi Germany. You had that. You had that. Then they brought down the trade centers in order to frighten the American people into where they will be submissive pawns in the game of the power brokers. So what?
It's not a model. That's the point. It's not a model. It's a reality. It's a reality. So when you say scarcity's been transcended, and then people look around and they say, but how come I'm worried about my rent?
Yeah,
how come my health is so?
It's different. It's different. Yeah, it's different. But I don't see that. That's just another example of the degree to which people will go in order to maintain control and power over the institutions that evolved out of history that ought to be subsumed within a larger pattern of understanding, and that's where the real pay dirt is. Not in one of the examples. There's been a lot. Iwo Jima. I mean, invading Grenada, overthrowing our Benz, overthrowing this. There's all kinds of examples of geopolitical shenanigans done by a power group that keeps their power. They did that in the courts of Versailles to keep their wigs all clean and good and everything. Then something else was emerging, and it's just a different way of seeing things, that's all. And public access and ACAP is important to keep open so things like 9/11, and it's very worrying that they're going to take certain things down. I heard you say they took something down about 9/11 because they embedded it in pornography. Maybe they got something about pornography in terms of their policy.
No. What
do they have?
Those were the weapons.
What are they trying to hide? That there's a power group that runs the world? What? That they're evil? And if only we could get the evil people in the sites, we'd be okay?
Hang on just a second, Harold. Rabbit Hole Central.
Hey, Paula, how are you? Frank Craven.
Hey, Frank, have you been watching the stream? It's very vigorous.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just watched your show, though, today with the guy who was talking.
Okay.
What's the subject you're talking about?
What are you talking about?
Well, I want to talk to you about a friend of mine's coming in, Carol Anton, the Course of Miracles and hemp activist, and I don't have a camera. I was wondering if you want to tape a
What, right now?
Dr. Joyce and everything, talk about hemp.
What, right now?
No, tomorrow or something.
Oh, tomorrow.
Also, what about Friday? Did you call M&N and get that squared up?
Oh, my God, I forgot. Is it too late? No, it's not too late. Hang on, let me talk to Harold just a second. Hang on. Hey, Harold?
Yeah, you got some pressing business.
Yeah, I'm going to take care of Frank here.
Okay, listen, this goes on and on.
Okay.
Things are looking good.
Okay,
Keep
Harold.
up the good work.
Harold.